It's a delight to have the sense of a community forming as we come together for Torah study. Welcome from Vancouver, Mark. I'm sorry to hear the fires in British Columbia. It is a sign of how the earth is responding to our behavior, and perhaps an invitation, as my colleague Sam so powerfully put it yesterday in meditation, for us to consider our relationship more deeply to the world and our impact on the world. Deborah asked about the podcast. Podcast is on hiatus. Thank you for asking. We're looking to see what might be a new version, a new opportunity. So thanks, Deborah, though, for asking. You can always go back and listen to them again. In fact, the idea of the podcast, as with our Torah study, as with meditation, is that it's not a one-time thing. All of what we do is about practice and about engaging with the practice over and over again as a way of cultivating consciousness, awareness, depth of connection to the deepest sources of reality. So whether it's the podcast or the meditations, you can come for one day for the meditation, but if there's something about that meditation that particularly worked for you, it might be worth your bookmarking that particular meditation and coming back to it again, either later in the day or every other day. To bring it into your life and for that to be the foundation to build your own personal ongoing practice. I will say this in a somewhat perhaps caustic way, although it's not meant in any manner to be caustic, but what we're doing in terms of the meditation and the teachings that go with it, in yoga, in Torah study, in the podcast, is not to be entertainment, but is to be an invitation to practice. That what we engage in here is meant to connect with the heart and to lead us to transform our lives. And it is about transformation that the month of Elul, of course, is about how we prepare ourselves for the new year, looking back, taking stock, engaging with what's been true. And then acknowledging that truth and being able to set ourselves on a path going forward for the sake of growth, for the sake of deeper dedication to service. And that's the avodah that we offer of our hearts and minds to God. Or that's the avodah of how we dedicate our hands to care for others. Or the avodah that we do to cultivate consciousness for the sake of clarity of choice and decision making. So we will begin with a bracha as we do. Thank you, Barbara, for posting the link to the text in case anybody wants to download it. We'll begin. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Throughout the past year and a half through Torah study, I've often related to the term vitzivanu and b'mitzvotav from the Hasidic point of view of tzavta, of connection. But perhaps as we begin to dive into our work on Shemitah, of letting go, of transforming our relationship to the earth, to others, to our own sense of indebtedness or being owed, whether it's on a financial level or an emotional level, or how we transform our communities to be more alive and aligned with what's true. Maybe we really should be connecting back to a sense of tzivui, of commandment. My sense is that when our minds are clear and we are least engaged with building up or protecting our ego, we know what is true and we know what's asked of us. And so when we know what's asked of us, it becomes a mitzvah, it becomes a commandment, becomes something that we must do if it's asked of us. Of course, we may know that we must do, and yet we can sometimes avoid doing. There are all sorts of commandments that we know, all sorts of things that we know that we really ought to do for the sake of others, for the sake of our own well-being, right? So, and we cannot do them. But as we engage now in our Torah study and in our engagement in this month of Elul and our introduction to a year of reflection on the practice of Shemitah, it might be worth our considering. Oh, really? This is a commandment? I really need to do this? How might I do that? For our first week's text, I would like for us to spend some time with something that we saw a while ago. It is a text from the Mea Shiloach, from the Ishbitzer Rebbe, from the middle of the 19th century, of the Polish school, as it's known. He was a student colleague of the Kotzker Rebbe, from Parshat Bahar, the Torah portion in Leviticus, where we get the bulk of the rules of Shemitah. And we did see it back when we were in the book of Leviticus, these book and a half ago. But it's a good grounding for us to consider as we now turn to our Torah study together. So let me just I thought I had that. Oh, here we go. We'll do it this way. We'll begin by considering this Mishnah from Pirkei Avot. And Pirkei Avot is the teachings of our fathers or the ethics of the patriarchs, or there are all sorts of ways of translating it, but it is a fundamental text of Jewish wisdom. And in this 5th chapter, there are many different teachings that are formulated. There are 4 types of this, there are 6 types of that. So here we have, there are 4 primary human orientations, Arba Midot Ba'adam, 4 qualities of people. Ha'omer shali shali v'shalcha shalcha, what's mine is mine. The person who says what's mine is mine, what's yours is yours. Zo midah benonit. This is a middling quality. The Yeshomim Zom Midat Sodom. There are those who characterize this as the quality of the people of Sodom. And it's worth giving some thought to this basic sort of libertarian point of view. What's mine is mine, what's yours is yours. You can't come into mine, I won't go into yours, don't bother me, leave me alone. And that is a way of living, and yet it is often a stingy way of living. It is an exclusive way of living. And so that may be why there are those Yeshomrim, those who say that this is the quality of the people of Sodom. Then there's another midah, another quality. Shali shalcha v'shalcha shali. What's mine is yours and what's yours is mine. Am haaretz. This is an ignoramus, right? This is somebody who doesn't really understand anything about the world, right? Because there is something that is fundamentally about, yes, there is possession. My body is mine, it's God's, but it is inviolate relative to you. There may be claims on it that are made by our tradition or by our community, but it's very rarely that I can be compelled to do it. So there is shali, there is what's mine. But to say shali, shalcha, shalcha, shali, what's mine is yours, what's yours is mine, but it doesn't make any sense. Shali, shalcha, v'shalcha, shalcha. What's mine is yours, and what's yours is yours. Hasid. This is a pious person. Shali, shali, v'shalcha, shali. What's mine is mine, and what's yours is mine. Rasha. That's a wicked person. The piece that the Mea Shiloch is going to pick up on, of course, is this midah. Shali shalcha, v'shalcha shalcha, and being a chassid. Now, I don't think that the Ishbitzer is really using this in order to say, if you want to be a chassid, right, then you have to have this orientation. I think he's teaching his people just how to be a proper human being, how to live a life of piety, a life of devotion, a life of consciousness. And he uses this, but it is worth our considering, what do we understand it means to be a chassid? Right? And what is the relationship of being chassid as a pious person relative to the idea of chassid and chesed as being love? So we have here the beginning of our Torah portion. Count off 7 weeks of years, 7 times 7 years, period, in the Jubilee, and so on, and return. Each of you shall return to your holding, and each of you shall return to your family in the Jubilee year. Each person shall return to their holding. Now, what the Ishbitzer doesn't do is he doesn't share the proceeding, which is about Shemitah, of releasing debts, right? But that's where he's going to turn first. So, Inyan Shemitah to Yovel, right? Here's how we should understand the matter of Shemitah and the Jubilee. In terms of the midot in Avot, Shali Shalcha, V'Shalcha Shalcha, what's mine is yours and what's yours is yours. And Shemitah is where we experience and enact the midah of Shali Shalcha, what's mine is yours. And here I'd like to think that what he's going to come to is here, understanding that what is mine is yours with a capital Y, that this is how we learn who really owns the land, what really is the things that we possess. Even though the earth was given to us as human beings, and that we can acquire possession of the land from which we can grow things or extract value, right? And he says, lo tzi lo mimena kol hatovot shebaolam, that from which we can extract all the goodness of the world. It could be digging for gems or gold or copper or what have you. It could be how we dig for oil, and it's true, that was given to us. We certainly discovered it, and it contributed to the development of wealth, but also health and of vitality in this world. It's because there are all sorts of good things that are incorporated or found in the earth. As it says in Ecclesiastes, Hakol hayame afar, everything came from the dust, right? But in the seventh year, we return the land to God. Because in the seventh year, we let the land lie fallow. Ownership of the land is suspended for that year. And no one can intentionally work the land to force it to produce anything. So in the seventh year, the land is given to God. Because during that year, we cease from our labors and from working the land, and that is otherwise permitted, in ways that are otherwise permitted, in order to behave according to God's will. And according to God's will, Ritzon Hashem, is to stop using the land, stop working the land, stop acting as if we owned it. And in this way, we keep God's instructions. And in this can be thought of then, the Zeyikra, or perhaps Zeyikare, this will be called, right? Shali Shelcha. What is mine is yours. We hand over to God all that we possess in the land. And so the first lesson here of Shemitah is that it is a practice that challenges us to internalize in deep and significant ways how the earth is not ours to use in whatever way we wish. Certainly, the earth was given to us and is necessary for our use. We couldn't live if we can't work the earth. If we were only functioning as hunter-gatherers, we, in the culture and society that we have, couldn't function. And in fact, the Torah assumes, I think that we have to imagine that the world that the Torah knew was already one of cities, was already one of commerce, was already one that understood that the earth could be worked for our benefit. But Shemitah is the reminder that our mindless use of the earth is not permitted. That we are only permitted to use the earth as tenants, as those who are given permission to use it and have to give back to its owner its original value. We have to allow it to lie fallow. Now, there are many other laws in the Torah that are meant as reminders that what we produce out of the earth is not ours alone. And that's tithing. And that's what we forget in the field, shichacha, that's left for the poor, for gleaning. And there's payah, leaving the corner of the field for the poor. And in many ways, we understand that as being what we dedicate to God for God's use for the sake of others. But Shemitah is even more universal because it's not what I give up of my produce for others for God's sake. Shemitah is my giving up everything of my assumption about ownership to experience absolute equality with the other human beings and animals of this world. That whatever the land produces has to be enough to sustain us collectively, equally in this world. So Shemitah is a radical invitation to consider what we understand to be ownership. There's a classic sort of mystical teaching that comes into Hasidut and is used of a matbea shel esh, right? That Moses didn't really understand what a machzita shekel is, what the half shekel was, and God had to show it to him. But what God showed Moses was a matbea shel esh, a fiery coin. And the way it's understood in the Hasidic literature is that money burns, right? So for some people, money burns in their pocket. They got to spend it. If it's there, it's got to be spent. But money also burns in that it causes us to become inflamed with wanting things, with what money can do. So when we shift from possession for the sake of sustaining life, promoting well-being, creating safety and well-being for our community, and it then becomes that which confers status, or when it becomes that which will fill my emotional sense of I gotta have, because something's missing here, we abuse the earth. And so Shemitah is a forced stop. It's like an intervention, right? Somebody who's a compulsive gambler, a compulsive eater, a compulsive drinker, somebody who can't control their use of drugs. Often there'll be an intervention. Family members, beloved community members, pastors, rabbis may show up and say, you've got a problem, and we will not permit you to harm yourself in this way. We're going to intervene. And Shemitah is an intervention for us in our lives to say, oh, maybe we should really stop and examine what's my consumption? What do I think about my possessions? And what would it mean for me to say, Sheli Shelcha, whatever I have is yours, God? And then to see this flow of money, of possession, as part of how I live, that it flows through me. And every time I stop it, I impede God's flow in the world. I interrupt how God wants the world to work, which is that everyone should be cared for. So Shemitah is an intervention. And then let's go on, because he's going to turn to Yovel. The Jubilee can be thought of in terms of Shelcha, Shelcha. What is yours is yours. And here he really is talking on the horizontal level. Shemitzvat Yovel, hu sheyashuv ish el achuzato v'ish el mishpachto. Right? The practice, the mitzvah of the Jubilee is that each person shall return to our ancestral holding, each to their families. Because God originally made people upright in the land. And God gave each of us a portion of the land. Now, he's talking both about the biblical allocation of land in the land of Israel, where this applies. I mean, Jubilee doesn't apply outside the land of Israel. But the intention was that every person among the Israelites who entered the land of Israel, their family, their household, received an achuzah, a holding in the land. And it was that allocation was a mystical one, because on the one hand, it said that this should be allocated according to a lottery, but also that the smaller tribes should get less and the bigger tribes should get more. So how did that work out? And here the Me'er Shiloh is talking in his language according to God's understanding of our unique stature due to from our root source, where we derive, how we are, who we are in the world. God made this allocation according to God's wisdom. God set each of us in our particular tribe and declared of us, they are my servants, right? Avadaihem, we are God's servants. But people engage in many calculations, bikshu cheshbonot rabim, to the point that they're able to climb economically, expanding their holdings and even acquiring their fellow as a servant. The latter, on the other hand, fell in their standing, selling their holding and even selling themselves. Nevertheless, God's word stands forever, so no matter what people do, it will not be contravened. Right? It's a hard thing for us to imagine. What does that mean for us today? Right? Because, again, the biblical holdings in the land of Israel lost. We have no records of who held what. It's probably actually being perversely applied in Sheikh Jarrah outside in East Jerusalem. But I think that we have to ask ourselves a question. What is it that allows for one person to rise economically, another person to fall? What's involved in that system? And what is the Me'er Shiloh telling us by quoting from Ecclesiastes that God made people upright? God made us straight, right? We should be able to deal in a way that is upright, straight, and mindful. But bikshu cheshbonot rabim. But we looked for many calculations. We looked for an angle, right? How do we, what am I going to do? How do I get a leg up? How do I, get one over him? And that is the whole of the capitalist system, right? If I got a better product, or if I can market it better, or if I can make people think that I'm better, if they get them attached to my brand, then I'll have more. That's the cheshbonot rabim. But it says that, right? The Me'er Shiloh says, but this is not to contravene God's plan. That people shouldn't stand over others, and nobody should fall in their standing to have to sell themselves. But no matter what divine judgments may befall us, that is, we may suffer loss, we may become indebted, we may in some way fall in our stature, they never touch our true being at our root source. Lo yagiu le'omek shosho. Because, after all, God created a time for all things so that we will ultimately return to our holding. Thus, God created the Jubilee in order so that each of us will return to our place in the holding that belongs to us through God's will. This is the sense of the Jubilee year shall be holy to you. Shnat HaYovel Kodesh Yeh Lachem. In the Jubilee year, the light of God's holiness will be revealed for all to see by means of the sounding of the shofar on Yom Kippur, so that ultimately all will recognize that whatever claim we have on our ancestral holdings given to us by God will surely remain with us. This is both a spiritual teaching. I think that in his context, Me'er Shiloh probably meant this as a spiritual teaching, but I think that we should be thinking about this in practical terms in our own society. That which we acquired through our mortal efforts, Zeh shabal yado al yidei pu'ulat adam, af sheya kinyono ad ata, even if it has been in our possession for a long time, vayaber shuto, and was in our domain, we controlled it. Im kol zeh, nevertheless, lefi she'eino shelo b'shorash, because it's not ours from our root source, yuchrach lachaziro limkomo hashayach. We must return it to its rightful place. So when I taught this a couple of months ago, I made the point that this is a teaching that we should bring into our conversation and our assessment of how we relate to reparations, to those descendants of people who were enslaved in this country. Because the Cheshbonot Rabbim were precisely that sort of calculation, right? How do I extract value from this new land? I do it by not having to pay for labor. I do it in the means that is capitalist, that costs me the least investment of capital for the greatest extraction from the resources that I have. And the resources then became people. And that's included in what the Mea Shiloach is talking about. He says not only land, that they sold their holdings, but we actually sell ourselves as indentured servants. So slavery in this country was chattel slavery. It was people possessed as property. But there was chattel slavery in this country as well. I mean, indentured servitude in this country as well, early on. Irish people were brought, prisoners were brought to this country as indentured servants. And their labor built what became the wealth of this country. And so Yovel, as an extension of Shemitah, asks us to the question, how do we enact Shelcha Shelcha? How do I actually come to recognize, oh, what's yours actually is yours by right? I haven't incorporated in my own personal pattern that I'm living in Lenape and Muncie tribal lands here in Westchester County. I love that it was a Muncie tribe that inhabited what's now Rockland County, and the city of Muncie that's inhabited by Haredim and Hasidim. I love that that was originally Native American land, and that their town, Muncie, is named after the Native Americans. If only we could make that connection in some way. But I do want to recognize that this land and the value extracted from it was possible because those who lived here originally were dispossessed. And we have to find some way to say, Shali, what I have, that is the wealth that I enjoy, is built from and belongs to you at its root source. Now, again, that term, its root source, is part of the mystical conception, right? All of us and our souls derive from Adam Kadmon, primordial Adam. Primordial Adam was cosmos before anything existed. It was the container of the nothing that was to become everything. When the world came into its physicality, sparks from Adam Kadmon fell into this world. Our soul derives from some point in Adam Kadmon. Some from here, some from here, some from here, some from here, right? And those souls from those roots are scattered all over the world. And we are constantly looking to hook up with souls and sparks from our region of Adam Kadmon. That's our shoresh. That's our root place. So what he's talking about is God has allocated our place in the world cosmically and physically, and we get to have that. For us, though, I think that we might want to, again, turn it from the vertical to the horizontal and ask, what is this? What do we mean when we talk about our root and what we have from our root source. And then begin to ask questions of what is shali shelcha in our context. And I do think that there is much to ask about how do we build up communities that were destroyed through dislocation, that were undermined through the legacy of slavery, that were excluded through prejudice and other orientations of heart and mind that prevent people from fully having access to the possibility of building themselves up. And ultimately what that means is that ultimately everybody will be bound equally by Shemitah and by Yovel. That nobody will be able to say, Shali, Shali, v'shelcha, shelcha. What's mine is mine and what's yours is yours and don't bother me. It's a constant economy of Shali, shelcha, v'shelcha, shelcha. Of recognizing, wait, how did I get a leg up? Or why am I a step down? And how do we work this out collectively? It may sound like communism. It may sound like socialism. I have no idea what the Ishbitzer thought. And I'm not sure that I want to promote any sort of political economy, but I do want us to be thinking about what are the values, the spiritual values and the practical values that our tradition challenges us to as we enter into this year of Shemitah, about how we think about possessions, about how we think about what do we do with our wealth and what's it for. Not everybody on this call may have wealth. My guess is, though, we have wealth enough to take an hour in the middle of a weekday for Talmud Torah, which provides some spaciousness. And we're not pressed by the need to constantly be working or by our obligation to our employer to be on the job, on the clock. And therefore we have liberty to ask these questions. And to ask these questions perhaps from a sense of ease of spirit, of capacity, and to begin to ask then, what do I do with what might be extra? Right? Have I, in the income that I have this year, and some of us are on fixed incomes, I don't want to challenge that. But even with our income, even the poor have to give tzedakah. Everybody gives to the food pantry. Right? Everybody is obligated in that way. So what am I doing? What's the payah? What's the corner that I leave? What's the shichacha, right? Do I round up my tip? How do I think about my relationship to where I shop and who the people are who are working there? And how do I see them? Those are the beginning questions that I think the Me'er Shiloach is inviting us to. He's asking us to consider how do we situate ourselves in this physical world, which is necessary for our life and livelihood, so that we can collectively live with it, live in it, and sustain it. So I just want to take a few minutes just to scan quickly through some of the comments Larry, perhaps Amaretz is a primitive communist. Right? What's mine is yours. What's yours is mine. Is a primitive communist. That's interesting. Here we go. Right. So Roberta comments that, or rather, Lauren comments that there are 850,000 Jews from Arab lands who were expelled from the countries in which they lived from the 6th century BCR. I don't know what that stands for, maybe BCE. Yes, I mean, certainly there is enough suffering of dislocation. And the pieces on the world board would constantly be moved if everybody had to go back to their original place or retrieve their original holding. So let's think about let's think about what we control. Let's think about our responsibility in the place where we live. Sometimes it's easier to scream at Bolsonaro permitting the Amazon being destroyed when we're not really looking carefully at our own use of natural resources. Okay. So a couple of book suggestions. Maybe some of you have seen it. Peter Beinart's article. Someone mentioned Joan Peters' book, From Time Immemorial, Jews and our dispossession. I think that there's a real question for us as Jews, by the way. I had a rather heated conversation with a colleague as to whether Jews are an indigenous people. There's a term that I learned back in the day of my study of anthropology. The word is autochthonous. It's got a CH in there. And it means people who are grown from their land, who come about because they were born in that place. Many nation states in Europe, and certainly the impulse of the late 19th and early 20th century, was about the national ethos. And that's really the roots of Zionism, of claiming our nationality and our rootedness in the land of Israel. It's very important. Our history is there. The Bible was there. Archaeology reveals over and over again our rootedness in the land of Israel. But the Bible also, the Torah itself, is very clear that we didn't come from there. We came from Mesopotamia. And we didn't last there. We went down to Egypt. We came back there over and over again. But part of the message of the Torah is that we are not of that land. We are of God's earth. And it's something for us to struggle with as Jews, about the need to promote a vital Jewish life, one that connects us to our history, to the Torah. And that's why I encourage all of us to still study Hebrew, maybe not to necessarily be able to order a full meal in Israel, but to function with the Torah, to have a sense of that being our legacy, but then also to understand that even being Jews in America, we are not rooted here. The land does not belong to us. This is not ours as a possession. Everything is conditional. Everything is provisional. Jews have been slandered for being internationalists, for being cosmopolitan, for not being of any place. And that really was what Herzl was trying to fight with the emergence of Zionism, to say, no, we are of a place. We're not a Luftmensch. We don't just go with the wind. But there's a danger when we become too tightly connected to any place as a possession and forget our provisionality, our conditionality in this world. And that's on the grand scale. It's also on the personal scale. Everything returns to dust. Sometimes over millennia. Sometimes in an hour. If we think about Greenville in the Sierras in Northern California, gone. Floods in Germany, gone. Katrina, gone. A bus, gone. A mindless fall down the stairs, gone. What are we holding on to? What do we possess? We don't possess our breath. We don't possess this body. It is us. We nurture it, and it sustains us. We possess the things in our house. Shali, shali. Stay back. And then we downsize, right? We Marie Kondo. Oh, does this bring me joy? Not anymore. Ciao. But before we did that, it's mine. You can't have it. What are we doing? What are we doing when we possess? And that extends to then how we function in the world. So this is just the beginning of the month of Elul. And Elul isn't even the year of Shemitah. That will begin on Rosh Hashanah. And it's not a year of Yovel. It's not a Jubilee year. But together, we'll study and practice to cultivate our own engagement with these sorts of questions. To say, right, Elohim asat adam yashar. God made us straight, upright. We can have clarity of mind and heart and spirit to behave impeccably in this world, to behave responsibly. Uvikshu cheshbonot rabim, but not when we make these calculations, not when we try to get one up, not when we get seduced by the marketplace. Enough of Slater's sermon. Thank you for your attention. I want to take a moment just to scan the gallery here and